Welcome to Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host, and thank you for downloading today's episode. Overcoming burnout with sacred rest. You are in for a treat. This show blew my mind. I loved it. I love all the information that you're going to get from it. And there's even a quiz you can take to see which kind of rest, one of the 7 different kinds of rest that you may need. But before we get to that and today's guest, I do want to do a shout out to the Food Heals podcast. My friend Allison Melody is the co-host of the Food Heals podcast, and they bring together experts in the field of nutrition, health, and healing to teach you the best-kept natural secrets to being a hotter, healthier, and happier you. In fact, they call it Sex in the City for food. If you love my show, you will love their show too. And right now, Allison and the Food Heals podcast ladies are giving away Lululemon swag bags to 10 lucky listeners who enter today. And let me tell you, I have some of these products already, and they're fabulous. So 10 winners will be shipped swag bags with organic, non-toxic, vegan health and beauty products like Zatique facial serums, which is awesome, a beautiful Welly water bottle, the Natural Dentist Peppermint Twist Rinse, also very awesome, Thrive probiotics, which are awesome. I just tried them for the first time, Axiology cruelty-free lipstick, which I have but haven't tried, 4 Stigmatic mushroom coffee, an issue of Veg News magazine, Vermont soap, B4 vitamin supplement drink, Addictive Wellness caramel, chai, and cacao elixir blends. I love Addictive Wellness. They actually supported my book launch, but I have not tried the caramel, chai, and cacao elixir blends, Banish oils and anti-aging skincare products, WM nutrition workout and weight loss supplements, and more. Here's how to enter. Step 1, subscribe and listen to the Food Heals podcast. Step 2, leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Step 3, screenshot your review and post it to Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And step 4, tag at Food Heals Nation and use the hashtag #FoodHealsSwag in your post. So check out our friends from Food Heals at foodhealsnation.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So one more time, you're going to tag at Food Heals Nation and use the hashtag FoodHealsSwag in your post after you leave a rating and review for their wonderful swag bag items, which I have had the pleasure to have a lot of them. So it's a great deal. So check it out. So today's show, Overcome Burnout with Sacred Rest, is an interview with Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith. She is a board-certified internal medicine physician and has an active medical practice near Birmingham, Alabama. She received her BS in Biochemistry at the University of Georgia and graduated with honors from Meharry Medical College in Nashville. She has been an adjunct faculty member at Baker College and Davenport University in Michigan, teaching courses on health, nutrition, and disease progression. She is an international media resource on the mind-body-spirit connection and featured in Prevention, MSNBC, Women's Day, Redbook, First for Women, and numerous other media outlets. Sacred Rest, which is her book, a 240-page hardcover published by Faith Words Hatchet Book Group, is available at most major online book retailers and bookstores. And her book is called Sacred Rest, Recover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, Restore Your Sanity. And today's show is all about overcoming burnout with sacred rest. Welcome to the show, Saundra.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I am really intrigued by your book about sacred rest. And I know we were talking about that you are outlining there are 7 types of rest that you all consider integrative and necessary for sacred rest. So why don't, before we get into this today's topic and overcoming burnout and everything we're gonna talk about within sacred rest, give us a little bit of your story, your personal story, not just your bio, but like how did you obviously get to the place where you're writing a book about sacred rest?
Yes, absolutely. As you know, I'm a physician, so my life is very hectic. I'm a mom as well and a wife, and so my days are really packed. And I had spent so much time focusing on getting this career and maxing out that aspect of my life that when I started having all the things that I thought that I needed to be happy and to be fulfilled, I didn't feel what I felt like I should in those moments. I felt like life had let me down. It wasn't living up to its expectations. And I ultimately burned out. I got to the point where I was at my lowest point in my life, and I literally was laid out on the floor with my kids propped up in front of the TV after picking them up from daycare, wondering what is my next step, because I spent all my years training for this profession, and I wasn't happy in it. And so I realized that really this was the life that I had created. And if I had created it to be this horrible, then there are some things that I could do to create it to be more successful and to thrive. And that's when I started looking at what areas of my life did I feel were depleted. And at that time, I was severely burned out. It felt like every area was depleted. And I just systematically went through it. I'm a scientist by nature. I majored in biochemistry and have a degree in internal medicine. So I like to look at things in a very systematic way. And that's where the book came from. It's my story of how I systematically worked through those 7 types of rest, how to regain them and recover my life, and how I now help other people do the same.
May I ask you your birthday without your year, what your sun sign is?
I'm Pisces.
How are you? What's your birthday?
I am. It's March 2nd.
Mine's March 5th.
Oh.
Okay, that's interesting. And obviously, I'm not going to do your chart right here and now, but I'm wondering what the system part. I mean, I'm a system person too, but you feel a little bit more engineer than I am, like you said, in terms of the science and the structure. Although I do the same thing with science and structure. So I'm just curious. I always like to ask people, because the other aspect to me astrologically for Pisces is that we're so susceptible for burnout because we're so emotional, and I feel like that energetic part of us also can easily get depleted when we overgive and we give to other people, and we're always doing for others. So that I just have to rope that in. Since I know we're going to go down a very scientific path as well as an integrative one with you, I just wanted to bring in a question. I was just curious about your sign. So okay, so let's talk about the first of all, can we define for the people who are listening what sacred rest means to you?
To me, sacred rest is looking at rest in a way where it is no longer optional. It is something to be treasured and to be valued, and that we should put a priority on, because so often we look at rest as kind of this extra thing we'll do when we finish the work. But the problem with that is the work is never done. There is always more work that you can do. The to-do list never completely gets done. So we have to be able to look at rest as something that's going to be at the forefront of our day, and not just this extra that we'll do when we get to it.
What are some of the main symptoms that people come to you for who I mean, do they know they're coming to you for rest, or they come just with different symptoms and you, by assessing them, make sure that they get rest in?
Yeah, that's a great question, because most of the time when people come to me as an internist, honestly, it's after they've already gone through kind of in our area, we call them doc in a box. They've gone through the urgent cares, they've visited with multiple doctors about a lot of just vague symptoms, headaches, body aches, they can't sleep, they have difficulty concentrating, their memory's not what it used to be. Just all of these vague symptoms that they can't kind of pinpoint what the problem is. And so they've received all of these unnecessary tests trying to determine if their adrenal glands are malfunctioning or their thyroid glands are hypoactive. And what ends up happening is they get all these tests done that tell them that nothing's wrong. And so a physician comes back and says, you're fine, nothing's wrong with you, but they still feel like crap, and they still can't sleep, and they still can't concentrate, and they're still not happy. And so they go to a specialist, someone who can do a more thorough exam. And so when they end up at my office, that's the conversation we have, is just going through, what have you done so far? What are your symptoms? And then most of the time as they're talking, I start asking some of the same questions that I actually have incorporated in my rest quiz, to help them be able to see where they're actually having a rest deficit. And that's when the light bulbs start coming on, because so many of them will say, well, yeah, that other doctor told me to get more sleep. And so now I'm sleeping 8 hours, but I still wake up tired. And when that happens, the problem isn't that you need more sleep. The problem is you need the right type of rest.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, sleep is not just about the hours that you spend. Absolutely. And I'm guessing we're going to uncover that with these 7 types of rest, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Right, let's go through them. What's number 1?
Well, I'll rattle them off, and then we can kind of hit the ones that you feel would be most interesting to your listeners. But the 7 types are physical rest, mental, spiritual, emotional, social, sensory, and creative.
Okay. Physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. What was the fifth one?
So social.
Social, right? Okay, so I'm writing so
Social.
fast. My handwriting is already terrible. I should be a doctor because my handwriting is so terrible. Social, creative, and then what was number 6?
Sensory.
Sensory. Okay, so let's go back and talk about that case you had with I'm guessing it was a woman who said, I'm getting 8 hours of sleep and I still feel like crap. So in that case, because that would be considered the physical, correct? That we're actually getting physically the amount of time, whether it be 6, 7, 8, 9 hours of rest. Is that fair?
Yes. Well, and that's the thing, because sleep and rest are not exactly the same thing. When we look at the physical part of rest, we're looking at both passive physical rest and active physical rest. So passive physical rest is the sleeping and the napping. So that's one portion of it. But then there's the active physical rest, and that's the stuff we do to restore our circulation, improve our lymphatics in our body, to relax our muscles. That's the part that sometimes gets missed when we have people who lay down at night. They say, well, my body hurts, or I have a headache when I finally lay down. It's because they're not getting the active part of physical rest that's needed to relax those muscles and restore circulation.
Fascinating. Okay. Looking at this list, I think I want to handle on a different topic, spiritual and emotional stuff. I'm pretty dive deep into those two things. What I don't deal with and what's new for me in terms of terminology would be sensory for sure, and creative, because when you said that, I thought creative rest. And to me, I think you mean creative expression.
No.
No. Okay. Right. So that's why. So I think I want to start with mental with you. So if we could do mental, social, sensory, and creative, that would be awesome, because I definitely know that everyone's mental activity is way off the charts and people don't know how to calm down. So I think that that's a huge piece. So let's do mental.
Yeah, that's one that's really important if you're someone who has a job that requires you to actively process information and you're constantly having to control a lot of facts. And I say job, but honestly, I see it a lot with women in general who are doing like homeschooling or things like that, where there's just a lot of tasks to be organized and a lot of organization skills that are required, because we get into this habit of having our cerebral space cluttered, just constantly filled with activity. And so when it becomes time to sleep, over 40 million people, a third of the population, are sleep deprived because they say they can't fall asleep at night. They can't get into those deeper levels. Well, for a lot of people, what happens is when they lay down to try to sleep, all of a sudden, all this stuff that you've been holding at bay kind of all comes together in your mental space at one time and wants to be processed. And that is not the time when you want to be processing all of your mental junk that has just been kind of floating out there. So what we teach people is as far as clearing your mental space, is to be able to, particularly before you go to bed, to do some mind dumping, to allow your mind to release information that is trying to hold on to. Because unfortunately, the way the mind works is if there's a thought that you have that keeps going around and around when you lay down at bed at night. Say, for instance, don't forget to put $5 in your son's lunchbox or something for school tomorrow, or something that's very trivial. The mind thinks that that's important because you keep holding on to it and you keep bringing it up. So it doesn't want to fail you by not holding on to that information. But when you mind dump it, or you take it out of your mind and you actually put it on something concrete, like a Post-it note, you could speak it into your phone to record it. You could write it on just a piece of paper that's by your desk. Anything. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just get it out of your mental space onto a concrete surface. It gives the mind permission to let it go. And so that way you're able to go into deeper levels of sleep, and your sleep is more likely to be refreshing in that way.
Definitely. I know people that can't stay asleep because their brain just wants to keep remembering whatever it is they're supposed to do the next day. And I've experienced that over the years as well. So that's awesome, and a great reminder for everyone who's listening, because there's a lot of mental chatter going on and anxiety that people hold on to unnecessarily, which of course is going to disturb the rest of the sleep. If you're sleeping and then you're not actually really resting, doesn't matter how long you lay in bed, or it probably prevents you from getting into the deeper stages of sleep, right?
Absolutely, because with the 5 different stages, 4 to 5, depending on which group of science you're looking at, but really the levels of non-REM sleep that affect us most are when we get into that deeper stage 3 and stage 4 of non-REM sleep. And those stages can't be accomplished if your mind is actively processing information. And so often, there are these situations that a lot of us will have happen to us during the day that are distressful to us in some way. And rather than process it in the moment, we try to put it away for later. And right before you go to bed is not the time to process that. I recommend for someone, let's say if a coworker ticked you off and, you had some type of issue that happened at work that really upset you. If you don't feel like processing those emotions in the moment, which is what I recommend, write it down and then process it when you feel like you have time to go there and look at it. Because just letting it rummage around in your mind is just going to create more toxicity, and it's not really going to answer the questions anyway.
Does the mental rest blend into the emotional rest for that very reason of what you just talked about?
It does to some degree, because really for me, I define emotional rest as the ability to be authentic in expressing our feelings and eliminating those people-pleasing type behaviors that cause us to feel like we're constantly performing and on show. There's a level of professionalism that comes with a lot of jobs, and what happens with that is we take those personas with us wherever we go, instead of having the ability to release that with those relationships that allow us to just truly be authentic.
Okay. So let's spend some time on social rest. Tell me, define social rest.
Social rest is the rest that comes when we are around people who revive us. So many of our relationships are relationships that are depleting. People are wanting something from us. And it's not that that's a negative thing. It's fine to be needed. Your kids, your spouse, they need you for whatever reason. But to only have those types of relationships in your life creates this constant pull without ever replenishing. And so social rest is allowing yourself to make it a priority to be around those people who are life-giving, who feed you, who help you to feel stronger and to feel better. And that when you leave your time in their presence, from being in their presence, you actually can tell that you leave those moments better than how you entered in.
Well, you just gave me another great angle for me to invite people to my event, because that's a huge piece of it, is that social rest piece. So thank you for that. That's great. And I absolutely know exactly what you're talking about. And I'm sure everybody does as you describe it, because there are people that when you're with them, you feel depleted, and other people that you get energy from. It's a very obvious feeling of either exhaustion or being really amped up and inspired and feeling energized, and possibly feeling just seen and heard and sort of more comfortable in your skin. So I think that's a great social rest. Okay. The next one, I'm going to make a guess that sensory rest has to do with technology and some technology and watching things and too much activity going on that stimulates us.
It does. It's basically, most of us have just continuous onslaught of sensory input coming in from things like our electronics, but also from things like the fragrances your coworkers wear, the background noise, and where your office space may be. Your five senses are constantly being just bombarded with activity, and sensory rest is taking time to specifically downgrade that exposure. So whether that's having a time period where you unplug from your electronics, one time, which I think most people really should start practicing, is just when you're at the table with your family. I think that should be a no cell phone zone, just because you can actually get some social rest in those moments when you're not staring at other things. Also with sensory rest, if you're working at a computer or you're someone who has to stare at something for a long time, then taking moments where you're allowing yourself to close your eyes. It's something as basic as that. Relaxes the facial muscles, eases the tension, and it allows your occipital nerve, the nerve from your eyes to your brain, to actually kind of turn off. And so you can feel that, just the sensation of that. Someone who's listening can just do it right now. Just close your eyes for a moment, and you can feel how that changes something in you. It's that momentary sensory deprivation that has a restorative effect. And some people ask me questions about sensory deprivation tanks. They're fantastic for people who have learned the practice of sensory deprivation before they get to the tank. However, for those people who are sensorily overloaded most of the time, when you put them in the tank, some of them will panic because they're not used to silence, or they're not used to darkness. And so you have to start practicing some of that before you go to that extreme.
That's great advice. I know someone who did it recently and did enjoy it. When they came out, I wasn't there to experience their experience, but that person in particular, I know, would do a lot of sensory overload from multiple, like TV, cell phone, and tablet all at the same time every morning. I was like,
oh, wow.
So I didn't hear any negative feedback about not being able to handle being in the tank, but I think that's it's like coming off of a drug. It's like detoxing. I think that's great advice, because people would think, oh, the theory of it's really good. But I think and maybe even as a good test, I think people don't really realize how much they're overloaded until all of a sudden they're not. It's like earthing and going to the beach on a vacation. People think it's the vacation, which sometimes it is, but it's also the fact that you're detached from technology, and then you're getting all those great frequencies from the earth and from the ground. And it's that, or being outside in nature somewhere in the woods, doesn't have to be the beach. But I don't think people are even aware of their dependency and their habitual habits around having too much stuff going on around them. I think I know I'm super sensitive to it. And I think that's part of the Pisces-ness being, and also just like you, getting burned out. And once you've hit that wall pretty hard one time, you go, don't do that again. So we pull back a little bit and start to learn how not to get there, because recovering from there is not fun, right?
Absolutely not. And I love that you mentioned about the beach and about being out in nature, because that's a great introduction to what creative rest looks like. That is, in essence, what creative rest is. When I mention that, so often people think I'm talking about them creating something, but that's not rest. That's work. You're creating something. Creative rest is the experience of allowing beauty, whether that's natural beauty or creative beauty, to inspire awe and to liberate wonder inside of you. And so that's why so often when people do go to the beach or they go to like some place where they're seeing the mountains or just some beautiful natural scenery, they have a tendency to feel this sense of awe and wonder and just liberation within them. And that's what creative rest is. It's also seen not just in natural beauty and natural creation, but also in things like music and art and theater. I have a lot of friends who really love classical music, and they can be sitting listening to something, and you can just see on their face, they're just enraptured by the experience, and something comes alive inside of them. Something is being restored and replenished in them in those moments. I don't understand it, because that's not how I receive creative rest, but for them, it's a vital part to how they stay energized and how they stay happy and thrive.
This is great. Now, looking at this list, which one or two do you think are the most prevalent yet not discussed or understood parts of rest that people really need the most?
The ones, when I get over 15,000 people have taken my rest quiz at restquiz.com. So I actually have the benefit of knowing which ones people are having the biggest difficulty with. And really, it's social and emotional are the two biggest. And I honestly think that part of the reason is we feel like we are very connected with each other just because of the amount of social media and the amount of access we have to people. But that those connections are lacking in that oftentimes they don't really have that freedom of authenticity, because we're either wanting something from people or we're trying to present something in a way that they are receptive. So we oftentimes don't really give our honest truth because we're wanting to uphold an image. And then with social media, on top of that, you don't get the presence. And that's really where the social rest comes in. It's not just the interaction, it's the power of presence. It's seeing someone's movements, hearing their voice inflections. That's why, if everyone on Facebook had to do a Facebook Live to present their thoughts and their comments, you would have a lot less negativity because people won't as quickly put that out there. However, it's very easy to put out negativity when you don't have to claim it by attaching your presence to it.
Interesting. Now I use very law of attraction terminology, which to me is also just basic physics. There's like frequency and vibration, but you could also say energy. Would you say power of presence is also just energy? So when it comes to social rest, we're talking about feeling the energy of a person?
Yeah, it's how that person, how they're interacting with you. It's how they make you feel.
Gotcha. Which is why, like you said, social media, you don't feel the energy of the person. You just have there's no energy there. It's just they're typing something unless it's a video. So having that social rest of community in person, or at least virtually, in a way that translates and transmutes energy in a different way. So that way you have that deeper connection. Now, the emotional piece, we didn't go over that, but that to me is definitely obvious with this amount of suicides that are going on now, especially high profile ones. And the awareness I think people are starting to have, at least I hope, in the need to understand emotions on a different level. So what, without going too deep into it, because I know you just wanted to cover a few of them, if there were one or two recommendations about the emotional piece that you had for people, what do you think are your top two recommendations?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up about the recent high profile suicides, because I can definitely understand that. When just talking about my own personal story, when I was looking back at that time that I was burned out, at that time I was being featured in Fox and Redbook and Prevention. And, my life on the outside looked like a success story, but my heart and my ability to enjoy my life was not there. And so being successful on the outside and having it look successful really does no one any good, because it doesn't allow for that person who's experiencing it to enjoy the benefits of that. And I think that's the disconnect that sometimes happens with high achievers. We love the achievement, and sometimes we forget that it's necessary to have those boundaries and those times of reflection that we can get from rest to be able to enjoy what we've achieved, because it can't always be about the chase. As fun as the chase is when you're a type A or a high achiever, the chase alone will not satisfy. At some point, you have to be able to just enjoy it.
Yes, absolutely. And again, your list brings us to a new level for me with understanding rest. When I look at something like some of these suicides, I go straight to the astrological emotional piece of people that don't really understand emotions and the breakdown of emotions. So there's a lot of misconception about emotion, which then, especially for people who are very sensitive, then misunderstand and don't think there's any way out. So I think that that's such a huge piece that I wish we would be teaching in schools, that we would, that everyone could actually get educated a little bit more specifically, so everyone's not so freaked out or makes generalizations about that. Today I feel this way, that must be truth. Like understanding the parts of the mind that make up emotions. So I knew that one was a big topic, which is why I stayed away from it for today's show, because I'm sure we probably could have spent the entire show just on that one. So so you're, if I'm hearing it correctly, the recommendations you're making for those people are to take more social rest, to about the other parts of rest, because they're not able to enjoy if they're kind of at that level. What was yeah.
So if I had to speak to myself in those moments on how to get more emotional rest, at that time I had maybe one or two close friends, and I never spent time with them because I didn't feel like it was important. And so the number one recommendation would be find your people who get you for who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and make it a priority to spend time with them telling your truth, however ugly that truth may be. Because in those moments when I was laying on the floor, my truth would have been, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't see the point of this. I know that other people think I'm giving them benefit in what I'm doing in my life, but I don't feel like I'm beneficial or that I'm even benefiting from it. And so you have to be able to have those people that you can speak that to. And that could be a counselor. It could be a coach. It doesn't have to be someone that is, your best buddy, your BFF. It can be someone that you're actually paying to be able to say that, but you have to have those people, because otherwise you get to that point where you feel like you are not understood and you're the only one. And that gets to be a very small box for which most of us suffocate in. And then the second thing that I would say to myself in that moment is to find time to rest, because for me, I associate rest with restoration. And so every time I do one of these 7 type of rest activities based on the different types of rest, something in me gets restored. And the more I get restored, the stronger I get and the more resilient I get. And I think that's required in the world we live in today. Yes, we have to have strong emotions and strong bodies and strong minds and strong hearts, but there has to be a level of resilience because there's always going to be things that are coming at us.
Right. And we're not going to build up that resilience if we never stop to let it expand. If we're just go, 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 we're always in breakdown mode, which is another reason why I started doing live events, because I wanted to gather my community and I wanted the social rest. I wanted the socialization part and the creative rest and the sensory rest of things in ways and how we do things. So I think that's great. And this is awesome. And it speaks to, especially from a physician's point of view, it speaks to the depth of rest and we take it for granted and think it's just sleep. But like you said, so many people are getting enough sleep, but aren't getting enough rest, and they're not rejuvenated and they're not bouncing back and they're not enjoying their life and they're not healing. And so I know you have the quiz, and we're going to tell people how to go take that quiz so they can find out where they need help. Let's say they get through the quiz, and then obviously you have your book. Tell us about your book.
Yes, my book is Sacred Rest, Recover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, Restore Your Sanity. And it's available everywhere. And you mentioned the quiz. The quiz is very simple. It's at restquiz.com. And I highly recommend they do that because really, oftentimes when people say, oh, I get plenty of rest. I rest on the weekends. And so I asked them, well, okay, so how do you feel after that? They can't quantify it because for them, they've just lumped rest over into this all-inclusive vegging out on the couch watching Netflix. Well, I don't have any problem with that if you just enjoy that, but let's not call it rest unless you can specifically tell me what got restored. Because if you left that moment no better than how you entered in, then that was not rest.
Awesome. And then how do you work with people after that?
Well, we do personal assessments where we actually look at your results for those who want a deeper understanding. The book goes in very great detail with each of the 7 types of rest, what it is, what it looks like, as well as giving 3 tips for each of the types of rest to help people be able to start implementing that day, different ways of getting more rest in that area. I also offer a Sacred Rest challenge that's free. It's a 30-day challenge where you get one little quick email every day for 30 days that covers one of the 7 types of rest, just a very easy way to start incorporating them. And there's classes that I do on Udemy as well to help people. It's called Lifestyle Upgrades for Busy People, to help them be able to learn ways to upgrade their life even while they're at work. A lot of times I work with companies to come into their workforce and to train their employees how to be more self-aware of their bodies so that they can then start having a bigger impact within their job.
I love it. It's so needed. It's really needed. This is a great conversation. Everyone, go to restquiz.com and take the quiz so you can find out where you need I'm going to go take the quiz so you can find out which area you need the most help in, and absolutely get the book and be in touch if you need some help. And make sure you look at all the different areas that you already know what you need to do about it and start to take care of those things as well. Because as those of you who've listened to my show know, I cover similar things in different ways, never to this degree about rest. And I'm so excited about that because it's another tool for everybody to feel better faster and to identify some of those areas that are stopping you. So go to restquiz.com to learn more about that. And Dr. Saundra, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thanks, JJ. It's been great.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. And I just want to remind you, we have very limited spots left for the next big step. Come on over to jjflizanes.com/next big step to get your live ticket or your virtual ticket if you can't make it to LA, so you can get all the same information in the comfort of your own home. jjflizanes.com/next big step.